Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. Unbelievable. Mayweather makes him pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's facts. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best. I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
Episode 87. Welcome back to another edition of the Last Round Podcast. Thank you again for joining us, whether you're jumping on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcast, YouTube, Boxing Socials YouTube, wherever you're listening, we appreciate it. One day, Mike, I'm gonna have to go down through the whole list of podcast platforms that we're on. It's probably gonna take the whole show though, because some of those I don't even know the name because I've never heard of them. But I'm not really insulting them, right?
There's a few random ones in there.
Yeah, but hey, if it works out, if you use a specific app for your podcast, we're probably on there. So we try to be on all the platforms that we can. But just being repetitive here. Thank you again for joining us, guys. It's just Mike and I this week. We're trying to last couple weeks. We decided to just kind of take it back to the foundation and do some solo shows, have some just regular boxing conversations with ourselves. Because, we did do a pretty long streak of guests every week, but we'll get back into that rhythm again, probably after this week or in the next couple weeks or so. So if you're missing some guests or if you want some people on here that you've been, wanting us to interview, you can always just reach out to us on Twitter, Instagram, and all that stuff, and let us know, like, hey, you guys should interview this person or this person. It happens all the time, right, Mike? Mike gets those messages.
Yeah, we get a few, asking for commentators, certain different aspects of the boxing world, I guess, that people would like to hear.
Yep. But, let's just jump right into it, obviously. I think, obviously, the most intriguing news of today, the last maybe 12 hours or so, is a WBO 130-pound world champ, Jamel Herring, tested positive again for COVID-19. It's such a strange time with all this, pandemic and this whole virus because, for people who don't know, obviously, if you're probably listening to this, you're a hardcore boxing fan, so you should know. But, for people who don't know, he was supposed to originally defend his title, maybe like a month or so ago?
I think 5 weeks, yeah.
Right, a little bit over a month ago. And he tested positive for COVID-19. So they scrapped the fight and, they had him quarantine and do all that stuff. And then he started posting videos and pictures of him working out. He was in the gym again, and then he said, "Oh yeah, I tested negative. I'm good to go." He looked great. It's like cool. It was cool. Everything seemed to be back on schedule. Then they rescheduled it for July. It was supposed to be tomorrow, right? July 12th, I believe, or July 14th. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
On ESPN, yeah, he was supposed to defend his title against Jonathan Okendo, and then today. It was released today, right? That he tested positive again for COVID-19, or was it yesterday?
Yeah, he supposedly tested positive today, and then he did a follow-up antibodies test, which they say disproved the result, but Nevada State Athletic Commission had already called it off. So,
it's just. I get it. I think realistically, everybody had to understand that. Adapting to this new world that we're in at the moment, especially with sports, especially with boxing, that stuff like this is going to happen. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you maybe know something that I don't, I think this is the first fighter or this is the first situation that's like this where somebody tested positive and they canceled it, they rescheduled it, he tested negative, I'm assuming multiple times just to be safe. And then he tests positive again as he gets right before the fight. I don't think in any other, not even the UFC has this happened, right?
No, I don't think so. Not in that kind of instance. You've had people, obviously, Michaela Mayer, obviously she tested positive, went away, came back, and then now she's obviously now the headlining act for tomorrow, replacing Jamel Herring. So
right. I mean, it's unfortunate because you could tell like Jamel Herring's like he's trying to be a champion and defend his title. Like I think we had asked him on when he was on our show a couple months back. Why are you going to do an actual title shot with somebody? And he was like, well, that's what I'm a champion. I want to defend, and it's admirable. And he was trying to, I guess raise the bar and defending his title. And even though obviously, I mean, would you have gave him a pass because of the pandemic if he wanted to do like a non-title bout? Would you have given him a pass?
I think so because obviously, I think it was the UK was saying that they didn't want to do like any title fights because of all the stuff that's going on, no crowds, people can't get proper training camps and stuff like that. So they were trying to stay away from having, world title fights for that reason. So I would have given him a pass, but I think obviously, Jamel wanted to have a warm-up fight. So was Carl Frampton. And then obviously they were going to have that big title fight towards the end of the year, like October, November time, I think it was scheduled for.
No, you're right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know, man. I just hope that whatever is going on with this virus and stuff like that, hopefully there's some type of finish line. Because at least here in California, as of today or this week, it seems like we're rolling back everything because everything's kind of spiking in the cases. But hopefully he's okay, man. I know there's been reports saying, just because you got it once doesn't mean you're immune. Like you can get it again. So like, but this is like the first, I guess, situation that's happened in public here within the sport of boxing, at least on a major professional level. So, I mean, do you think that do you think he got like his results this morning and they scrapped the fight, or do you think they canceled it yesterday? I mean, or do you think it was within the last like 72 hours? What do you think?
I think it was just before the weigh-in because the way that his Instagram and social media was going, he was kind of counting down. He had himself on the scales. He was eating like his last little meal. And, he was kind of saying like, hey, I'm already on target. And then, the next one was, just apologizing to the fans. And, it's been called off. And then, coincidentally, he got his antibody test from a previous test saying that he had the antibodies, but he didn't have the actual coronavirus at the minute. But I think it was too late to reschedule it, according to the Nevada.
Gosh, man, you really got to have a ton of patience for something like that. Like in terms of, I know it's not his fault or anybody like that's fault, but like in terms of being the promoter, for example, in this regard, being top rank, Bob Arum and all the executives over there. I mean, it's tough, man. It's tough. Like, we have to give credit to like Top Rank and UFC for trying to putting on these events throughout the last month and a half or whatever they've been doing. Because if you look at it at the 11th hour, the day before your actual fight, the whole main event can go away. So and
that was one of the better fights out of the 6, 7, 8 weeks of cards they've been doing. The Jamel Herring fight was really one of the better bouts. And, some of the audiences they've had on the ESPN, 200,000, 300,000 kind of being the max. And then, tomorrow's show is now headlined by Michaela Mayer. I don't think the ratings are going to do very well, but...
Right. No, I completely agree. Like, I mean, how like normally when there's no pandemic, there's always, especially in the main event, there's always like a backup opponent, like if there's a main event and then like the promoter will always tell like another fighter who's in the same weight class who will likely be approved to take somebody's spot. Like, hey, if something happens, I need you to be ready. So I need you to be training. Or if this guy pops dirty or gets injured or something, how you always have like a safety net guy? Like, do you think for something like this, they have like maybe 2 or 3 guys that they've told to be on standby because of the situation of this pandemic?
I don't know. I don't know whether they can just because of the bubble. I don't know how many people are allowed inside, because it looks like at the minute when people are dropping out, they're just scrapping the fights, and they're just having kind of a little 4-rounder, 6-rounder on standby. Those guys are kind of like the swing bout. They step up because I think I was reading on Twitter that the whole card's now down to 4 fights, so they didn't have anybody really to step in, and they just promoted Michaela Mayer against Helen Joseph to the top, but.
Right.
I think it's good for the fighters to get paid, but sometimes is just to have boxing for boxing's sake. Like the ratings aren't going to be great. I think me and you are diehard fans, and if something comes up, I'm not overly concerned about missing the card now that Jamel Herring's on there.
Right.
I just don't know whether just to put some boxing on, but really, is it doing the boxing hemisphere any good with the type of cards they're putting on? I think everybody's kind of been talking trash about the top ranked cards. Right.
No, I mean, you're right. I mean, like, there's been, obviously they've had some decent fights, and like, regardless if the competition hasn't been as satisfying the hunger that boxing fans want, they have had some, the Maloney Franco bout was entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
And then Franco, it was a new champion, so there was some drama there. Like, and then the whole Robert Garcia, like we talked about in last week's episode, like there has been bright spots, and they have been consistent. Like you gotta, kind of playing devil's advocate here. You also got to look at it from the promoter's perspective. They have contracts with these fighters where they owe these fighters certain amount of bouts every year, and they lost like what? 3 or 4 months of the year, like, unless they restructure those contracts, I'm assuming they're still on the hook for something like that, or they don't want to have to go through the whole legal process of restructuring them, or like, oh, we're only going to give you 1 this year, or whatever, So in that regard, that's why they're just pumping them out. And also, Top Rank having to deal with ESPN. ESPN is probably like, hey man, we need some live sports, so help us out, So, I mean, and boxing from a professional sporting perspective is easier to put a bubble around, to use that term, I guess, to put a bubble around in terms of this pandemic than it is, of course, for like football, American football, or soccer, or baseball, or basketball, which is obviously a lot more scrutinized in the United States, especially, and there's like 10 to 15 times more people involved in those types of events. So, I mean, I don't know. What do you think
about the content?
Yeah,
I think you're right in the essence that ESPN just wants to show something. Like when you're flicking through Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that, and ESPN are putting on clips from Call of Duty because that's the only thing they can show, because there's no live sports. It makes you laugh because they would never do that in a normal world. So it's a strange time we're living in. I kind of slated the top ranked shows a bit, but I still watch them. Frank Warren did a show last week, and those fights were good. A lot of prospects, really. So same as top rank, they're kind of putting out their prospects, and it's good for those fighters because they wouldn't normally get the TV time. So it's good for the guys who go in there, make a show of it. Get some good knockouts, show off. It's a good time for those guys to really, get into people's mouths. Hopefully, some people will get the exposure after the coronavirus. So,
right, absolutely. I mean, and then kind of going back to your point about the ratings and stuff like that, like especially, how the main event, obviously Jamel Herring is scrapped, which is a world title fight. So obviously that will likely affect the ratings. In tomorrow's Top Rank on ESPN, broadcast. But, talking about the ratings, like, I mean, what's the highest ratings that Top Rank has had so far since they've been on ESPN in terms of during this pandemic? I mean,
I think around 350.
350.
I think so. I think that was the Maloney Franco card, I believe was the top.
Because like the reason I bring up ratings is because obviously we just had a UFC pay-per-view on ESPN, the app, ESPN Plus, this past weekend over there at Fight Island, the thing they've been marketing for quite a while now, Abu Dhabi. And there's been reports today that it did 1.2, 1.3 million buys. So over a million buys, which was, I don't know how much was the price on the pay-per-view tag. Did you see it?
Well, I don't know. To be honest with you, I know it's like if you paid for a full year of ESPN, I think you got it for free. But I don't know the individual price.
But you got to, in terms of that, you got to look at it this way. You have to pay for the ESPN Plus app, and then you also have to pay for the pay-per-view within the app, right?
$4.99, right?
Right. So, I don't know. I know that there's probably people yelling at their audio, their radio right now, their earbuds or whatever, like saying that, well, UFC has a monopoly on all their fighters. It's easy for them to put these guys against each other. It's a little bit easier for them to force these guys out to fight each other, which, I agree with. That's true. But, there's going to come a point where, boxing is, especially if this pandemic lasts as long as we think it's going to last, they're going to have to put some world title. Like I know Jamel Herring, it's not his fault. He was supposed to be on there and stuff like that. But like you said, before tomorrow's fight, before Jamel Herring was scrapped because of his, secondary test, it was Franco Maloney, which was also a world title fight, which to us it was an entertaining fight. We appreciate that. But like you said, being on ESPN, and ESPN is such a global sports channel, there's a lot of casuals that just turn it on. You kind of have to, is it better to risk to put competitive fights and sacrifice the gate that you're not going to get in order to get some big ratings during this time? What do you think?
That was what people were saying, before the fight started. Everyone kept saying, well, this means that those tick-over fights are going to go in the trash because people need to get paid and we need to get views. So, Eddie Hearn and, Bob Arum, Frank Warren, that's what they were all saying. But yet when the fights came back, Frank Warren put on prospects, Top Rank, put on a lot of prospects in kind of one-sided fights. So it didn't come to fruition, what they said. I understand that, your Terence Crawfords and your big-name stars, then they're not going to fight because the amount of gate money that they're missing isn't going to cover their purses. So I still think they could have stuck in some more, like local fights, more 50-50 fights. But
how do you look at it in terms of, since you mentioned like somebody like a Terence Crawford or like obviously like a higher profile fighter, world champion or whatever, like obviously there's some fighters that are probably looking at it like, look, I don't want to fight because it's of a safety issue. They're just nervous about the pandemic, which is understandable, obviously, with everything that's going on. But what if there's fighters out there who, like, that's not their issue. Their issue is like, well, no, they're not going to pay me what I want to make. I'm not going to take less money to fight, so I'm just going to sit out. You as a fan and as a media member of the boxing media, like, how do you look at something like that?
I think it's up to them at the end of the day. If they've got enough money that they don't need to work, then it's their career. They can choose to do what they want to do. You can't force them to fight. So if they don't want to fight, then they don't fight. But don't complain about it. If you're not getting fights, don't sit there and complain like you've got no money when people are offering you fights. So it's their own career. It's a short time. If they want to sit on the fence and, Top Rank may, or whoever they fight for, may look back and say, well, we offered you a fight 6 months ago. You didn't want to fight. So see ya. Next person up. I saw, and I'm sure you saw it too, but ESPN, Steve Kim from ESPN had tweeted out because, kind of going back to the UFC main event from this past week, the main event was originally Usman versus, who was the original guy? Burns.
So he was the original opponent, and then He got scrapped. I'm not sure for what. I know you probably know, but and then Jorge Masvidal jumps in on essentially like a week notice or something like that. Steve Kim of ESPN, I think, had tweeted something about saying that pretty much comparing like Masvidal's, eagerness and confidence to take that bout on a week's notice, even though he was obviously in training shape, or he was close enough to in training shape, keeping his body ready just in case. So it obviously worked out. But Steve Kim kind of criticized, like pretty much saying like, hey, this guy took it on a week's notice. He's like pretty much saying, I don't want to hear all you other fighters, especially boxers, complain like, oh, we only have 6 weeks to train. It's not enough time and stuff like that. I mean, like, I thought that was pretty interesting because he's right. He is right. Like, like a move like that was like a power move by Masvidal. But it's not the first time that's happened. Like, there's been other fighters who in the UFC who have done that, like on a couple weeks' notice or whatever. So it happens within their organization. But I mean, like, what do you think of Steve Kim's tweet in terms of that whole notion right there?
I mean, I can understand where he's coming from. If you're a fighter and you're ticking over, or you're in camp for another fight that's maybe a week or two later, then you're ready to jump in and maybe take that fight. But if you're just sitting at home in between camps and you're eating cake and just watching TV, then obviously you're not in the physical condition. So the old saying about staying ready so you don't need to get ready, that's in times like that comes into fruition. Obviously look at Masvidal. He got the payday that he wanted. He got the opponent that he wanted. He lost the fight, but I'm sure the payday was nice, especially for someone at the later part of his career. So it's, you very rarely see that in boxing. In the UFC, you see it. Michael Bisping, the English fighter, he won the title on, I think it was like a week's notice or something like that when he beat Luke Rockhold. And it's also good for the champion to accept it. When you're coming in with a guy with a completely different style, it was good of Usman to take the fight against Masvidal. So,
right. Yeah,
you never really see that in boxing. The standing opponent that obviously we can all think of as Ruiz against AJ, but that was
right.
4 or 5 weeks before, right?
Right. Yeah. A little bit over a month just before, but even then, like that was actually it also helped because I mean I don't think anybody can deny that Ruiz had just fought. He had just fought at the StubHub Center. He fought against Dimitrenko, I believe. Yeah. And he beat him. So, because I mean, I'm sure you can agree with me that if Andy Ruiz had not just fought and he was still like in fighting shape, I mean, there's a higher chance that fight would never happen.
No, especially with the long layoffs that Andy used to have between fights, he wouldn't have been in people's heads. Whereas the fact that he just fought, just won, he was kind of at the forefront of the, US market, I would say. So,
right.
And also, he wouldn't have been in anywhere near shape with.
Right.
We kind of know what Ruiz is like. So.
Yeah. I mean, I still think touching on Ruiz now, like they've been saying that he's supposed to fight Chris Arreola, or there's been reports that they might make that fight, which I think they will. Two Mexicans going at it, especially if you do it in LA. But I think he needs to come back and kind of avenge that loss in December to AJ. But who knows? If Arreola, kind of quickly touching on that fight, if Arreola, I think in my opinion, if he can produce a fight like he did against Kaunaki in New York, where they obviously broke the record for punches thrown and all that stuff. Like Arreola, like he had a lot of stamina. Like if he can kind of maybe keep up that stamina and that energy against Ruiz, like I think it'd be. I favor Ruiz, but I think it'd be an entertaining fight, at least from a competitive standpoint like that. What do you think?
Yeah, it'd definitely be a competitive fight. Arreola always seems to you just go in there and stand and bang, and Ruiz is very similar. He stands and bangs, and for a heavyweight, he throws quite good combinations. He kind of needs to go in there and prove a point as well. I think kind of let a lot of people down. He let a lot of the Mexicans fans down, just coming in out of shape. And, he kind of went from hero to zero with that one fight, because obviously he was the first, Mexican heavyweight. Everyone loved him. He was a god. And then he turned up, and obviously, the Mexican's supposed to go in there and go out on the shield, right? And he didn't. Yeah. He didn't fight like that at all. So
right. No, you're right. I mean, hey man, at least he had his moment in the first fight. They can't take that away from him, regardless. I mean, obviously, it would have been crazy if he won the rematch and kind of really showed like, dang, I am the man in this division. But who knows?
It's just odd that he chose to go with Reynoso, right, as his coach.
Has it been like officially, like, I know it's been officially because I know he's put it on social media, and so did Reynoso. So I know it's like they've acknowledged it, but like, I mean,
he's been training with Jorge Capetillo all the way through.
And that's in Vegas. And that's in Vegas, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing I can think of, because like, I don't know, I could be wrong, but like the only I can think of is that like he's training up there in Vegas with Jorge Capetillo because he's just trying to stay in shape or at least slim down or just kind of keep his stamina up, because Reynoso's probably busy with Ryan Garcia right now and Canelo. So he's just like, I mean, like with somebody like Reynoso and then the Canelo camp, obviously Canelo's going to take precedent over anybody else. And he's got like Oscar Valdez. So like, Reynoso's got a pretty decent camp over there. So, I mean, the only thing I can think of is that Ruiz is just like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. Like, I'm going to go and just work on my conditioning and stuff like that. And then, when you're done with Valdez or Canelo, Ryan, or whatever, then I'll come in and we'll get to work. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of, like, because I'd be really surprised if they actually already split up. You know how stupid that would look? I mean, what do you think?
No, it'd be good to see, when they actually get back into camp. But I didn't know whether he was in Vegas just because of, I don't know, lockdown rules, and maybe that gym was open and Reynoso's wasn't open. Or it was just strange that like he kind of announced it and then he didn't. I don't think I've seen anything with him actually doing pads or any kind of work with Reynoso yet. But maybe he's just waiting for a fight announcement and then he'll come back to California and train with them in San Diego.
That's a good point, though, in terms of the whole lockdown restrictions and stuff, because, obviously we're here in California. Andy Ruiz is from Southern California, and Nevada is a little bit looser with their restrictions in terms of this whole COVID-19 thing. So that's a good point. Maybe he went to Nevada to go train because he was like, well, the rules are a bit loose over there, are looser, so I can get some training over there and get my work in. So that's also a possibility. I didn't think about it like that. That could be a possibility, but because he was training at Legends, and then he was training at somewhere. Where else was he training at?
For the second fight, he was training in Mexico, and then at a gym, I think a private gym in San Diego for a little bit, and then Legends as well. Right.
So, I mean, we'll see. But I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't fight the rest of the year. You know how these PBC fighters are. Just once a year and stuff like that, and I feel like a lot of them are going to follow the Gary Russell route and just fight once a year, and they're all set. They're good to go. But I know there was some recent Dillian White news. Can you tell our listeners what's going on with him, Mike?
Yeah, he's split from his longtime coach, Mark Tibbs. You can see there's quite a good interview that Mark Tibbs has posted on his Twitter. It was kind of strange because he did an interview with IFL TV and also Seconds Out. And then I don't know whether Dillian White's team got in touch with them both and it was taken down. But Mark Tibbs managed to repost it on his social media, so you can find it on there. Doesn't really say anything disrespectful or, in my opinion, there's nothing on the interview that would make you think why they would take it down. So it's kind of a strange situation. But from people in the know, it sounded like it's kind of been on the cards for a little while. Sorry. I don't think there's any kind of falling out. I think it's just that, Dillian wanted to train out in Portugal for this camp, and Mike Tibbs had to come back to England because he had a family. So, it's just maybe he wanted a little bit too much full-time care, like you were saying about Canelo and Reynoso. So he's gone a different route. So it'll be interesting to see which kind of big name coach he'll land in the future. Will it be like a Ben Davidson, a Caldwell, one of the kind of big British names?
I mean, who do you think would ideally fit his style? Like, who would bring the best out of him? Who's, in terms of the British trainers, of course, or any trainers, but obviously he's from across the pond, so those would be kind of first choice. But who do you think?
I like the way that Ben Davidson breaks down fights. When you watch him do previews and reviews of fights, he's very knowledgeable. He notices little things that you wouldn't necessarily notice without, watching a lot of tape. So I quite like the way that he breaks down fights. Obviously he's only really worked with Tyson, a little bit with Billy Joe, and then also Josh Taylor now. But I could see that would be good for him. He's got a small stable of fighters, so he'd get obviously a lot more attention. But I think Ben Davison would be good.
Who's been rumored to fight him? In the next couple months. I mean, obviously with this whole pandemic thing, but I mean, who's at the top of the list? Because I haven't seen any news about potential opponents for Dillian White. The only thing that always comes up, like any hardcore boxing fan knows, is always his WBC title shot that he's had for 5 years. But
he's scheduled to fight Povetkin in Eddie Hearn's backyard.
Oh, that's right. It's the finale of the backyard series.
Yeah, I think April.
That's right. That's right. I don't know how. Yeah, I don't know how I didn't remember that. That's right. That totally slipped my mind. I thought. I totally forgot about that fight. I totally forgot. When is that whole backyard series supposed to start? I feel like he's been advertising it for a while, and it hasn't. It's wasn't it supposed to start already? When is it actually supposed to start?
August.
It's really?
I think it's every weekend in August.
Oh wow! No way. Wow. I mean that works. But Eddie Hearn, he got all the necessary permits and the commission over there. They signed off on the whole thing. I mean, has he said that in interviews? I mean, I'm assuming so, but has he?
He must have done. He runs British boxing, right? I'm sure they probably just gave him whatever he wanted. Just make sure it's safe. There's going to be no fans there, so
right.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Eddie makes the British boxing go round with the amount of money he generates. So
right.
I'm sure him and Frank get whatever they want.
That's true. I mean, are these going to be, or is it going to be a combination? But are these going to be? I don't know if he's announced. Are these going to be fights at night or during the day or sundown? I mean.
For us, I think it'll be morning fights. I think they're going to try and be normal British time, as far as I know. So obviously for us, it's going to be early morning, probably around 11, 12 o'clock on DAZN.
Right. And DAZN, by the way, obviously we'll jump more into that card next week, as that's the week of. But DAZN returns from an overall aspect July 24th, I believe, next weekend. With Golden Boys of Vergil Ortiz against Samuel Vargas. That's right, Samuel Vargas. So, I mean, real quick to touch on Ortiz. I know we touched on him last week and all that stuff with the whole Ryan Garcia drama, but and we'll go more in depth into Vergil Ortiz's fight next weekend, obviously. But just real quick, just a yes or no answer. If Ortiz wins this fight and he gets a KO, obviously all of his wins are by KO, by knockout, who ideally, you as a matchmaker, as a promoter, as an advisor, hypothetically, who would you match him up with after that?
I think if he beats Sammy Vargas, you've got to go for a more of a B-level, A-level fighter, and I would go with the person that he called out after his last fight, and the person he spoke about that he would like to face down the line is Keith Thurman. You really think
that would work though? Thurman today, I think today or yesterday, I think today was calling out Spence, or there was something written about that he was calling out Spence or something. Like, I mean, where did that come from? You know, is he just trying to get media attention? Like, yeah, but you know what? I could see. You know, I think Thurman, and I've said this on the show before, but Thurman, before he started getting injured all the time, was, at least in my opinion, probably the best welterweight. And if he would have stayed on that path and kept going without any injuries, he never, you know, unfortunately suffered from these injuries, I think it would have been him and Spence as the top two welterweights in the world. But I think because of the injuries, I still think Keith Thurman has talent and he's a threat regardless. But I mean, am I wrong? Am I wrong if I say that if Ortiz did hypothetically fight Keith Thurman, I think Ortiz beats him? Am I wrong?
No, I think so. I think, you know, Thurman's just kind of slowed down with age, with injuries, long layoffs. You know, if he's fighting Vergil Ortiz, you've got that young, hungry dog coming in there who's gonna want to be one of the, you know, the passing of the baton, you know, the old getting overtaken by the new. So I don't think it's probably a fight Keith Thurman would have won unless he's going to get paid a good chunk of change. But I think, you know, if you're looking for those people maybe on the downslope. So like if I was Vergil Ortiz, you're going to try and be picking off some names like a Danny Garcia, maybe Keith Thurman, you know, those people that still have that name recognition, but are maybe, you know, coming towards the end of their career. So, you know, he's in a tough weight category.
He is. No, he definitely is. Arguably, it's the toughest one in all of boxing, arguably. But, I mean, I think so far he's been showing his talent enough where he's just like, you know what, maybe this kid can hang, you know? Like, I think so far he's been showing enough where, like, you haven't really had to doubt him and his skills yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think since we started this show, we've been kind of, you know, pushing Vergil Ortiz. I saw him probably 2 years ago when he was training with Joe Diaz, and he was sparring with like Lucas Matisse and people like that, and you could just tell then that, you know, he was good. He's good at going forward. He's good at defense. He's good at countering. He's good on the back foot. He's got everything. You know, he's quiet. He's also humble. I think, you know, everybody is saying it now, but, you know, we've been saying for a long time that they should put their eggs in the Vergil Ortiz basket, take them out of the Ryan Garcia basket, put them in the Vergil Ortiz. You know, Vergil Ortiz just goes in there and, you know, knocks out Herrera, knocks out Orozco, and then just disappears, you know, whereas Ryan Garcia is constantly on social media, constantly he's on different commercials, different sponsors, where, in my opinion, Vergil Ortiz is going to have an immensely better career than he is.
Do you think that, I know we said we were just going to touch on Vergil, but I think we're kind of getting into a pretty good discussion here. And, you know, obviously we'll talk about it a little bit more next week when his fight's coming up. But because you kind of sparked the question in my mind, you talked to comparing him to Ryan in terms of, like, you know, Ryan has the social following and Ortiz. But there's obviously, we've seen in boxing, in the fight game especially, but in boxing, where there's fighters who never really kind of have, like, the personality to sell in front of the camera, but because they knock everybody out, like they produce the fireworks in the ring because they have like a 25, like, look at Triple G. Like, Triple G obviously kind of got lucky because, like, Canelo was around, so he was able to they were able to latch onto each other and kind of work off of each other in terms of keeping their names in the media. But why was Triple G also looked at? Why did he get a lot of press as well? Because he knocked a lot of people out, and what was it, like a 16 fight knockout streak, or was it more? Or was it 20 something?
It was a lot. I can't remember exactly, but it was a lot. Yeah,
and he got a lot of attention because of that. Mm-hmm. Like, do you think that somebody like Ortiz, where all his fights right now, all, I don't know, 14, 15 fights that he's had or whatever, have been all knockouts, KOs, TKOs? You think if he keeps that going, do you think that, like, he can gain a significant following and really raise his stock in terms of, the casual fan wanting to tune in and be like, hey man, I want to watch this kid. I heard he knocks everybody out, and it's like his 25th fight and he's knocked everybody out so far. Let me see. I want to see if he's going to do it again. Kind of like that intriguing factor behind it. Do you think that could happen?
I think so, but you need people to push it out there. You need Golden Boy, you need, your HBOs that used to do it for Triple G. You need DAZN to jump on there and, on all of their social media platforms, show like highlight reels of, Vergil Ortiz knocking people out. He's going to be, a world champion. Sooner or later, when those guys get old, Vergil Ortiz is going to come in and, probably mop up that division. So instead of putting it behind Ryan Garcia the whole time, the thing that's annoying is like Ryan Garcia's got 6 million Instagram followers. He didn't sell out the Honda Center. You've got more people. You've got more people flying over from England to watch people in Las Vegas than he is to sell out the Honda Center. And the prices for the tickets were cheap, and people were like, "Yeah, but there's a lot of traffic on those roads leading to the Honda Center." It flips an 11-hour flight from England to Vegas. And you got to pay for hotels, tickets, and everything. You get more people coming to watch Ricky Hatton, watch Conor McGregor, watch Anthony Joshua, watch any English fighter, but they don't have 6 million Instagram followers, so it's not relative.
Right. I'm glad you brought up that point, because there's been issues like, oh, well, Ryan sold out the Honda Center. He drew 10,000 people and blah, 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 this and that. And like you said, the ticket prices were low.
Yeah, true.
And the Honda Center holds more than 10,000 people. He didn't sell that place out.
He sold out what they opened up.
Yeah, he sold out what they opened up.
Yeah, the lower bowl.
And that happens a lot with fights when they know even with certain bigger fights, but especially in boxing, they'll open up certain sections because as long as we can sell these first, it'll look good on camera. And if they get to capacity they're getting to capacity, they open up the next bowl above or something like that, I think the Honda Center right there in Anaheim, California holds
I would say double. I would say 15 or 20.
I don't think it's 20. I don't think it's that much. I think Staples Center's 20. I think they hold a lot. But I think it's between 12 and 15, I think. Maybe 13, 14, around there. And like you said, he didn't, the tickets prices weren't that, they were inexpensive, not expensive, inexpensive. And I mean, I don't know. I get people are going to latch onto that. Oh, well, he sold 10,000 people. He sold 10,000 people. And hey man, if they put him up, obviously it sucks because this pandemic, we can't see his actual drawing power. I think that's where people, because he fought right before the pandemic in February, mid-February, before all this stuff, the whole world went. Yeah, before the whole world went to shit. So, I think a lot of people after that, especially when they saw, 10,000 people, that is an accomplishment. I don't, regardless of what we're saying, that is an accomplishment. But I think everybody was looking forward to, let's see what he can draw if they put him in with somebody higher profile, more talented, and maybe a Staples Center, maybe this, maybe that. But obviously we're not going to be able to see that for a while. But I mean, I think Vergil Ortiz can be just as big because of his knockouts. That's his key right there. Is obviously his talent. Obviously that's what's elevating him in the sport. But it's the knockouts. I mean, you and I both know that fans, even if they're not fight fans, people like blood. They like knockouts. They like drama, and that's what Ortiz brings. Mm-hmm. Garcia's been knocking out people too, regardless of what you say about his opposition and his career. He's been knocking these guys out too. But I don't think you can argue to say that in terms of the viciousness behind the knockouts, and when you compare the two, Ortiz's knockouts and how he knocks his guys out are completely different than Ryan Garcia's. Am I right or am I wrong?
It's just caliber of opponent.
Right.
when you've got Mauricio Herrera, who really should have been a world champion when he got obviously that shocking decision against Danny Garcia. You got Orozco, who's been in there with, world title challenger. I don't think he'd ever been knocked out. And then he gets in with Vergil Ortiz, and Vergil Ortiz just wipes the floor with both of them. So,
right.
Caliber of opponent. We've looked at, Ryan's opponents. They've always picked people from the weight division below and dragged them up a division. So Ryan was the taller, stronger, bigger opponent. So
what if you put somebody like Jeff Horn and Vergil Ortiz together? What do you think about that? Even though is Horn is fighting at 160 still?
He did move up, yeah. I think because he had that he had problems getting down to welterweight.
So he did stay at that weight class then? He's
fighting the Costa Zeus, so I'm not too sure what weight division it's at though.
I know. I saw that he was fighting in Australia, but I wasn't sure about the weight class.
I would say with age, he's probably moved up and stayed up. He had problems getting down to 147 for the Crawford fight. So
yeah. I mean, yeah. Who knows, man? Who knows? Obviously, we'll dive into his potential and his fight obviously a lot more next week. Hopefully, no COVID thing pops up in his fight and all the other fights on that card as well. So DAZN can get back in the picture, because regardless of what you guys think, what people think about, all these different promotions, all these different networks and stuff like that, it's all boxing, man. It's all boxing. Like, I don't know how you can be a fan of one network, like, oh yeah, forget these guys. I hope they go down, or I forget these promoters. Like, what the hell? Like, why? Like that just means that more, like, if you want them to go away, that means there's less boxing on TV. Like, we've been trying to get, like, it's for years before we got like ESPN contracts, and then DAZN jumped in, and Fox and stuff like that. For years we were trying to get back on the mainstream TV, and we finally did it, and then people are still complaining. I mean, what the hell, right? Mike? What the hell, Mike?
People are never happy.
Man. Wasn't there something else we were going to touch on? I feel like I'm forgetting something. What am I forgetting?
I'm getting old, Danny.
Come on. Remember. Oh, come on. But, obviously, like we did, we've done a good 45 minutes here. But like, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, the last couple of weeks, we kind of went solo, as you could see, or as you can hear, just so we can kind of talk about ourselves. Because I mean, like, if you think about it, Mike, like, yeah, we've had a lot of guests the last several months, which has been great. We got to meet a lot of new people and talk to them, open up their story, open up, their knowledge to the listeners. But me and you really haven't kind of inserted our opinions, or haven't been able to kind of elaborate on our opinions on the sport. And usually that happens is when it's just us two. So I think that's great when that happens.
Yeah, it's good. It's just sometimes you've got so many podcasts doing the same thing, and it's kind of, you want to bring something a little bit different, because they want to hear 22 opinions on the same sort of subject. So sometimes it's just better to get on a guest where they can, hear it from somebody kind of within the circle. And, hopefully slowly but surely we're going to get events. Golden Boy's coming back, like you touched on with Vergil Ortiz. I think PBC announced that they're going to come back in, was it August? Matchroom's back, Frank Warren's back. So hopefully, I know California's going backwards and they're shutting stuff down, but from what I read today, it still looks like we're okay with sports with no attendance. So
right.
That's good for us, in terms of, the podcast and all of us as boxing fans.
Yeah. Hopefully, I mean, like I said, it doesn't seem like there's any type of finish line in this whole pandemic thing, in this whole world right now, which sucks. But, as long as they keep our boxing on TV.
What did you think about what did you think about Shakur Stevenson vacating and moving up?
Oh, that's right. I can't believe it. See, that's what that's what I forgot to mention before the show. I was like, there was something I was forgetting. I just couldn't. I mean, is it me, or when I looked at him before, obviously before that news, he seemed like a big guy for that weight class at 130.
That's what that was one of the things that he said he was putting it down to. It's kind of funny that, you know, him and Josh Warrington were going back and forth, and Warrington was kind of saying, like, hey, dude, like, I'll come over there. You can come over here. Shakur was like, yeah, I'll fight in England. You know, I want to fight in England in front of a big stadium with people. And then, you know, Josh Warrington was calling him out like, hey, sign the contract. He wouldn't sign the contract. And then, you know, he moves up. You know, was Josh Warrington telling the truth? Did Shakur just not? But Shakur is a good fighter. I'm not saying he's a good fighter, but was just Warrington all wrong for him? Was it risk reward? He just wanted to protect that. Oh, was he going for a Floyd Mayweather type thing? It's interesting.
Do you think it's more because he's moving up to 135, right? I'm assuming.
He's moving up to 130, and because he had the WBO, he'll be a mandatory. He'll be a mandatory, won't he? For
that's right,
the title.
Right. So he had the 126 belt, right, at 126.
Yeah, because then we had Navarrete move up from 122 to 126. Secured then moved up from 126 to 130. So everybody's just dropping belts and moving up.
Yeah, I mean, hey, that happens. It's not the first time that's happened, but I mean, what? So you got Valdez at 130 now. Shakur is now at 130. Carl Frampton, 130. Jamel Herring, 130.
The stacked division, Burchell,
and all these guys are like top ranked guys. So
you want Ray Vargas?
Yeah, I mean, so Top Rank has a lot to play with in terms of that division. Like they can kind of rotate those guys out. It's just like PBC does. Like they've been doing all these years with their welterweights, just kind of rotating them around to fight each other. You know, Top Rank can do that at super featherweight,
and he's young. He's young.
Yeah, he's young, and he's good. He's good, man. He's good, regardless of what you think. Like the kid's good. He can fight.
If he keeps himself on the straight and narrow, away from all the exterior activities, you know, stays away from the Broner and Gervonta Davis type lifestyle, then he'll mop up that division. He's got very, very skilled.
He's a very skilled fighter. Yeah, and he's also making more money than Ryan Garcia.
Yeah, well, that's why Ryan won't fight anybody. He wanted $2 million to fight Linares. So I'd like to see how he's going to price himself out of this Campbell fight. He probably wants about $5 million. Yeah, just about. But I mean, yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up about Shakur vacating and moving up because, you know, you got Valdez, Burchell, Herring, now Stevenson. I mean, Top Rank's got a gold mine at that division, man. Like they got a lot to play with. I mean, who would be the most? Would it be Valdez and Burchell as the most competitive fight at the moment that Top Rank has in that division? Yeah, and that looks like, from the rumors, that's what they're trying to make. Right? That'll be a great fight. That's on paper. That looks like a great fight, and I hope it delivers. That's a Southern California stub-up fight. It is. It really is. I mean, do you think if this pandemic didn't happen, do you think they would have it at StubHub, like as the main event there? Or you think they would have put that in Vegas? I don't know. I think they might do it there because of the Mexican fan base. In California? Like the StubHub? Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, because we were at the other one, the LAFC. That was Burchell. I've been to the Valdez Scott Quigg fight. That was at StubHub. So they've both done previous fights in this area. So why not do it there? You know, they may do it in Vegas because the fighters want to as well because of the tax break. You know, if you're going to lose a lot of your purse fighting in California, so that's why I think that like if they do put Valdez and Burchell together with no fans during this time, it'll obviously be in Vegas because there's no point to get hit by taxes. You know, that's a pretty good topic we should touch on real quick. Is that, do you think California is going to be, besides Golden Boy's going to be doing fights here because this is their home turf, but I'm assuming at least for boxing fights and UFC fights, for fight sports in general, especially boxing,
I don't think California is going to get a lot of love during this pandemic because of the state taxes.
No, I wouldn't have thought so. And then, Vegas just has the perfect things you need for the lockdown, because you can hold the fight and the fighters and everybody else in the hotels. So
right.
I think obviously, like Golden Boy touched on when we chatted to Jack Ruiz and all those guys, is I think they're going to use Fantasy Springs because of you've got the convention center where they always hold the Fantasy Springs fights. 3, 4, 5 times a year anyway, and it's a hotel.
Right. But I mean, like, if you fight, like, Fantasy Springs Casino over here in Indio, California, that's an Indian reservation, isn't it?
Yeah.
So when you fight on Indian lands, Native American lands, you don't get taxed, state taxed, right? Something like there's rules like that. I think that's why, like, Pechanga and Temecula, California, and then, like, obviously Fantasy Springs and some other ones, I think that's why they have a lot of fights there. I mean, it also helps that it's a casino and a hotel, but I think because of its sovereign land, then they don't get taxed.
You'd know better than me.
I think so. I think so. I think. I'm pretty sure. But because remember when this whole pandemic was starting, that Dana White said he has struck a deal with that. It was like a Native American Indian casino up north here in California. And they had talked about because they won't get taxed because it's sovereign land and stuff. But then the governor and then the commission kind of put a lot of heat on them to not do it, even though they kind of didn't really have too much authority, just enough. But so I think it works like that. But like I said, I don't think California is going to get a lot of love during this pandemic, so it's going to be places like Arizona, Vegas, Texas, Florida. But I think Nevada is where you're going to see most of your fights. That's where you're going to see most of your fights and most of your broadcasts come out, right?
Yeah, I would say so. It's just perfect for it. And they already hold a lot of fights, so you've got good officials, you've got a good commission that are used to holding a lot of big fights. So it's kind of reliable team, right?
Reliable team, Mike. Reliable team. But, wrapping up here, we appreciate you guys listening once again, whether you've been with us since the beginning or this is your first time listening. We appreciate it. Thank you for giving us your time to listen to us. If you listen to the whole episode especially, we appreciate that because we know that takes a lot of time. It's obviously easier to listen to us when you're on your way to work, on your way home from work, or in the car, or you just, have some earbuds in, hanging out or something. We appreciate it. We thank you guys for listening to our takes on the sport. And we're hopefully back next week with another guest back in the fold. We're not sure who's lined up right now. We have been talking to quite a few people, quite a few different camps to try to line some people up, right, Mike? So
yeah, we have a few in the back burner.
So we're trying to get you guys some surprises here and there. So we're doing a lot of work behind the scenes to make those happen. But before we sign out here, Mike, go ahead and tell them where they can follow us on the socials.
At The Last Round 12 on Twitter and Instagram. And like Danny said earlier, if you've got any guests or any ideas for the show, just drop us a message.
Yeah. And then, maybe we should, I know Twitter, obviously, I think we've done it maybe a few times, not too much. But on Twitter, we should start using polls. You can put polls on there and you can have people vote. Maybe we can put some realistic guests that we can get, but we have a chance to reach out to and see who people want to vote for, to like, I'd like to hear this person, or I'd like to hear this person, or maybe topics like, like what more do you want to see us talk about, kind of have the boxing community kind of get their input. I don't think that's a bad idea to kind of gauge the audience.
We had a couple of fans reach out, a couple of listeners reach out to do a listeners one where they all come on for like 5-10 minutes and chop it up with us.
That's right. That's something we've been talking about. So obviously we'll explore that a little bit more. That sounds kind of interesting, kind of a little out of the box. But once again, thank you guys so much for listening here at the last round. We'll be back next week with episode 89, hopefully with a surprise guest. Like I said, we're working hard behind the scenes. But once again, I'm Danny Z. For my co-host, Michael Shepard, this is The Last Round.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This is The Last Round Podcast.